Good morning. I'm Dan Tupper, District 3 Commissioner and President of the Board. This is the regular meeting of the Jefferson County PUD Board of Commissioners. It is Tuesday, December 14th, 2021. It is 10 a.m. By the direction of the PUD Board of Commissioners and in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Jefferson County PUD is no longer providing an in-person room for meetings of the BOC. All meetings will be held remotely via Zoom. Participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. If you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute, and *9 to raise your hand if you wish to be recognized to speak. With that, we'll do the agenda review intros by commissioners to determine the quorum.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner, District 2.
Jeff Randall, Commissioner, District 1.
Thank you, commissioners. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Seeing and hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion on the agenda? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The agenda stands as presented. Item number 3 is public comment. The public comment period is for any items not specifically listed on the current agenda or for items that are listed on the consent agenda. The chair may place time limits on public comment to allow the meeting to be conducted in an efficient and orderly manner. We will do one time per person for 3 minutes, and it would help for the audio record if you would give your name and your service location, but it is not mandatory. With that, I will open up public comment. Jessica Dillon, I see your hand is up. 3 minutes, Jess.
Thank you, Dan. This is Jessica Dillon, and I'm in District 2, and I am speaking today as the CAB chair. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to give you just a quick little update. The CAB did meet yesterday, and it was a very, I think, beneficial meeting. We had a good presentation that was given to us by Jean Hall, and all the CAB members participated fully in the roundtable. So that was a good outcome there. We did elect officers, and I've been elected to serve a second term as the CAB chair, and Tom Engel is the new vice chair. So that's really about it. We're hoping to soon get a joint meeting with the Board of Commissioners and get some directions so we can move forward. We can develop our subcommittees and start meeting on a regular basis. So thank you for all that. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Jessica. And I think your hand is still up.
Yeah, I'll get it down. It takes me a minute.
Are there any other persons who wish, let's see. Ken, did you want to say something?
Yeah, 2 things. We need to advertise for one open position on the Citizen Advisory Board and another soon-to-be open position. So following our customary procedure, we should run an ad in the maybe in the PDN as well as the leader, letting people know that they can apply for that position and to send us, if they're interested, a resume and a letter of intent. And also, I don't know whether we'll have time to discuss it today, but we should shortly try to schedule the joint meeting between the Board of Commissioners and the CAB.
Thank you, Commissioner. Maybe during the manager's comments today report, we can discuss that.
Hey, Ken, could you identify what districts the openings are expected to be in on the CAB?
They are both District 2.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? I saw Linda Herzog on the screen for a moment. Did Linda want to weigh in on public comment? So I'm not seeing any hands. There's Linda. Go ahead if you're trying to get on.
I'm sorry, I'm on my phone and I don't have all the little buttons that I usually have on my computer. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, 3 minutes.
Okay, good. I'm Linda Herzog and I'm in District 3 and I'm calling on behalf of nonprofit organization called Count Me In for Quilcene, which is 11 years old now. And we, as much as we can, help the community of Quilcene and Brennan, South County, to address issues and to have a little fun, do some celebrations down there, and throw our interest and our capabilities into other efforts that others are doing in South County. In this particular case, we learned that many of the street lights that had been supported by Quilcene community volunteers have been turned out as of, I think, about 3 months ago. And we would like to engage the PUD in the possibility of partnering with us to turn those lights back on, at least insofar as the lights that people want turned on for safety are in that group. And we understand that it's possible to choose the particular lights that we want to turn back on, and that the PUD will take payment for those lights and not all. I think there's altogether a dozen of them, but there are 7 or so that we think are important for the kids, especially in the dark nights coming back from games and practices and that sort of thing. So our specific request is that the PUD be able to share the cost of turning those lights back on for a stated period of time, say 3 to 5 years. We've calculated what it would cost per year to turn the ones on that we're interested in, and it could be up to $1,500 a year. We don't have a lot of money, and it's not always a continuous stream of money, but we feel like we can do 5 years if we have the partnership of the PUD to help us continue that service for 3 to 5 years. So that's my request of the commissioners, and I think you have a letter to this effect that I sent several weeks ago. And I'd love to hear your discussion, or perhaps if you want to have that discussion offline, I'd love to hear back what your thoughts are on that. Thank you very much for hearing me out, and hopefully for partnering with us.
Thank you, Linda. Yes, staff has made the commissioners aware of your situation out there, and I imagine that we will probably take this up at some point, probably not necessarily today, unless the commissioners have other opinions on it at this point.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Let's put it on our agenda for our first meeting in the new year.
Staff has, I'm fine with that. Staff has some direction unless there's more immediacy to the problem.
Well, it is dark right now, so I'm hoping that when you meet again to discuss it, that we can make a decision at that time. We're ready to jump right in if the conditions are right. So thank
Thanks,
you.
Linda. So is there anyone else? I guess we're giving staff some direction there unless Jeff disapproves of that. So.
No, I'm fine with that being on the agenda in January. That sounds fine.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. So anyone else with public comment at this point in time?
Annette Hunke would like to speak.
Annette.
Can you hear me?
Yes, 3 minutes.
That's Hanky, Will, please.
My apologies.
I used to be a hunk, but I'm not anymore. Good morning, commissioners. I have a few questions to lay with you. I'm curious to know how many of the PUD employees did not want to receive the COVID jabs, but were coerced to, and they relented to keep their jobs. How many of those were there? I'm curious to know how many PUDs in Washington State are following the hard line that our PUD has taken with the mandates. And I'm curious to know how many PUDs in Washington State are not requiring the mandates at all. And those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. So again, on those questions, I don't know if Kevin or Melanie can weigh in at all or want to weigh in on that. Commissioners?
Commissioner?
Yeah, Joel. Oh, sorry, Joel.
Yeah, before staff weighs in on anything, I just want to say that some of that information is really confidential to the employee. And I don't think it'd be appropriate to comment on the individual status of each employee. And, you know, I'll just say that there was no, you know, it's a matter of opinion whether it was coercion or not. It's not a factual matter. So thank you.
Thanks, Joel. And the second part of it, I haven't done very much research, but I don't know if there are any other PUDs that are going down the mandate line or not. So that's something that I don't have any information on that at the moment. Anyone else? Any other further questions or comments for public comment? I'm not seeing any hands. So we will close public comment and move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed below on the consent agenda are considered under one motion and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion on those items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda by a commissioner and will be considered separately. Any additions or corrections to or objections with the consent agenda? I am not seeing any hands. So I would entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda is adopted, approved. Item number 5, old business. For the old business and new business section discussions, please hold public comment until each presentation is done, but before there is any vote. Item 5.1, the water system plan volumes 2 and 3. Kevin and Samantha? Or Bill?
Yes. Is Sam on? I'm not seeing Sam.
Hi, it's I'm here.
Oh,
Can
there
everybody
you are,
see me?
Sam. Yes.
Thank you. So good morning, commissioners. I'm very excited to be here at this point. This has been the 2021 water system plan update for volumes 2 and 3 is what we're here to discuss and hopefully approve by resolution. This has been a great team effort, and I have here this morning with me too, Bill Graham, Jefferson County PUD's resource manager, as well as Jeff Hansen with HGR and the project manager, and they will help with the presentation as we move forward, as well as field any questions you may have. So we're going to just go through a little bit of a brief history, and then we're going to jump right into requests, and then if there's any questions of the plan or the resolution or any of the materials provided. So we've started this prior to myself being at the PUD, but we're going to go to a little bit more recent history. In 2020, we went through with the commissioners kind of the layout of the 2020, at the time, the 2020 water system plan update, but now known as the 2021 water system plan update. We went through volumes 1 through 3. We went through volume 1 in depth during that time. And then we had another presentation to really go into volume 2, which we are here tonight, or today, I'm still used to today to discuss. That goes into each of our group A water systems and does an analysis of the different types, a technical analysis of the system. And we also have today to kind of go over, Bill Graham's going to go a little bit about stepping you through what is in volume 3 and what those each chapters entail. So I will turn it over to Bill.
Hi, everybody. My principal task on the water system plan was to work with HDR and Pacific Groundwater Group to update volume 3, which is our wellhead protection program. Just some background with regards to the reason why we're doing this is we're required under law to do source protection as a group A water system, a system with over 15 connections as of 1994. We're required to do a wellhead protection program. Our first version of this was in 1996, and then we did another revision in 2011. Now we've got new systems since 2011. We acquired the coil system in 2012. We built the Quilcene system in 2007. We acquired Calla Point and its 4 wells in 2012, and we got water rights for the Reynolds well and the Bywater Bay system in 2019. So this represented a significant update. We had Pacific Groundwater Group do some of the hydrogeologic characterization work on the new wells, Reynolds well, Coil well, Calla Point. And we also wanted to look at the Quimper water system wells, because a lot of work had been done by the U.S. Geological Survey, and we needed to determine whether or not we wanted a more sophisticated level of wellhead protection, or a more simple kind of cookie cutter. It's the circular or calculated fixed radius methodology, which, based on the complexities in the Quimper system, PGG, in consultation with us, we determined that we needed to do a more simplified calculated fixed radius method until more available hydrogeologic information was out there. So based on all this work, we create these calculated fixed radius maps that show the time travel for essentially a particle within a radius that's the 6-month travel time, 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years for all of our sources. And then that information becomes the basis for the county critical aquifer recharge area maps, or their what's called their special aquifer protection areas, which include the wellhead protection areas of our wells and other wells in East Jefferson County. And that also overlays with susceptible aquifer recharge areas, which to them are geologic formations, and where the areas are deemed susceptible, there are septic system requirements that are for new properties that are developed within those areas. So the maps themselves become the basis for some regulatory action through the county in the comprehensive plan. We're not the regulatory entity, but we work in conjunction with the county in having their maps updated. The maps will look different based upon the revision work that was done. We modified based upon pumping rates estimated for 2038. That's the planning horizon endpoint. It's about 56% additional demand, and as opposed to the maximum pump rate, which is what the areas are defined as now. So they will actually, some of them will shrink somewhat. Their shapes change, so therefore we have to work with the county and make sure that, and State Department of Health, make sure that they have the right information that's updated. So what else? That's that's about all I have with regards to the plan update, unless there's some specific questions.
Yes,
Somebody?
are there any questions on volume 3? And then we can kind of go into what has changed from volume 2 from the last time. So, and I can keep going, or if you have a commissioner.
I'm not seeing any hands from the commissioners, Samantha. I guess, is there any public comment at this point?
Okay, so thank you, Bill. And so volume 2, as you may recall, was submitted about the holiday time last year. We submitted it to Department of Health in November of 2020. And also working with Department of Health in order to get the Shine Plat Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, they reviewed our Bywater chapter, which is chapter 2, and chapter 1, which is the methodology of how all the chapters are laid out ahead of time. We submitted the whole packet, but in order to be eligible for the funding, they reviewed that chapter first. And so that was approved by the board and Department of Health at the end of March in 2021. And so we received comments for the remainder of volume 2 from Department of Health in June of 2021. And so the latest update incorporates Department of Health's comments, the county's comments, as well as ecology's comments. And that is what is on our website currently, just that update of that information. So as I said, in March 16th is when the Board of Commissioners approved the 2021 Water System Plan update for Volume 1 and Volume 2, Chapters 1 and 2, which were the methodology and the Bywater Bay chapter. So today we're here to ask for the approval of the resolution to approve the Volume 2, Chapters 3 through 9, which is the remaining Group A systems, and also Volume 3. And our next step would be to send this to Department of Health for their final approval. And that is the rest of our formal presentation, and we're ready for any questions you may have. Or if Jeff Hansen, if you have anything to add.
No, I don't, Samantha. I think you've covered it well. We're at the tail end of the process here, where once the PUD adopts these plans, then the state will approve them. So that's the sequence, and that's where we're at.
So thank you, Bill and Jeff and Samantha's Commissioner Tupper. I really have only one question. With what we've experienced recently with Reynolds and Bywater, is there going to have to be any amendments? I mean, are we going to be able to stay within, the plan as you're going to present it? Is there any hitches in the giddy up with that?
I'll start, and then I saw that you unmuted, Jeff. Not that we know of at this time. I sometimes I wish I knew the future, and other times I don't. But as of this moment, we don't have any further updates. But did you want to add something, Jeff? I saw that you unmuted.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Samantha. Again, as previously noted, the Bywater Bay portion of the water system plan was previously approved. In working through the issues around Reynolds Well, the State Department of Health required that the PUD submit a project report. This was a few months back, September timeframe, I believe, Samantha, to clearly lay out how the PUD was addressing those concerns and what the path was moving forward. That satisfied the state regulatory requirements around that issue. So we don't foresee any need to amend or modify the actual water system plan in reaction to that.
Any other questions for this group? Not seeing anything from the commissioners. Unless staff has something to add, I will ask for any public comment, and then with that, we'll probably move on to getting commissioners to weigh in on moving this forward. Anyone from the public? Seeing and hearing nothing from the public, I guess I would entertain it. Do we need a motion for this? Is this going to come back in the form of a resolution, or is this just a simple motion to move this forward?
The resolution was included in the, I hope so. I'm looking at Will, but the resolution was included. So hopefully it's the approval of the resolution and.
Yeah,
and then-
I don't have the resolution in front of me.
So I've got it. And
Okay.
this is Jeff. I'll make a motion that the board approve a resolution adopting the Jefferson PUD 2021 Water System Plan, Volume 2, Chapters 3 through 9, Gardner, Coyle, Quimper, Lazy Sea, Triton Cove, Snow Creek, Matt's View, Quilcene Water Systems, and Volume 3.
And I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I would just like to say it's really nice to see Bill Graham back at these meetings and to hear your voice. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you for everything, Bill.
They're
Thanks.
here.
Thank you
I
so
agree.
much.
Yep, good to hear you, Bill. So any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. So with that, we will move on to item, and thanks again to all those involved with getting that finished up. 5.2 sewer rates postage stamp option.
So I'm going to start this one out and then I'm going to turn it over to others. So this staff has really been talking about our sewer rates, how to move forward in a very even way. That's probably the wrong term to use here, but we do have some issues with the sewer and how we're funding things and how we move forward, not only with our existing systems, but if we move forward with the county, the Port Hadlock system, the Bryn, and some of those others. So we're going to give you a real small presentation on a postage stamp rate where they would all pay the same and reasons why at least staff would like to be considered. This is a departure. We know that we are looking at individual rates for different types of systems. So this just gives staff time to look at if the commissioners would consider going to a postage stamp rate. So with that, Sam, do you want to jump in or do you want Will to jump in?
Sure, I'm okay to start and then I'm sure Will help out. Do you want me to show my screen, Will, or did you want to pull up the agenda report?
If you've got it, otherwise I can get it. If you
Okay.
got it there, that'd be great.
I do. I am semi-organized. Oops. Okay, let me zoom in here. Is this okay in size for everybody?
Yeah, that looks pretty good. I have one quick question for background, Samantha, before you start. This little graph we're looking at here, was this generated or passed by FCS at all? Because the numbers didn't seem to match up with the presentation that we got from FCS.
This matches up. The only difference is that our year one was 2021. And so now our year one is 2022. So that's why they don't exactly match up, just because of that fact. So I had to do a little bit of math that I hope was correct. But I will double check to make sure, but that's the only difference. And then the year 6 is 2027 rather than 2026. If that answers your question, Commissioner Tupper.
Somewhat, but go ahead and proceed.
Okay. So I just wanted to briefly go over and then I'll let Will jump in. So table basically it's table 5 is the 5-year implementation, and we're showing the standard rate, the Beckett Point rate, and then the Calla Point rate is what we talked about at a previous meeting, as well as the 5-year phase-in for having these 3 separate rates. And then below that would be the postage stamp rate, which is in the black bold bar there. And it shows what the existing rates are for each of the systems, and then what they would be as they increased through the 5-year. And then I thought the important piece is if you go to the bottom of the 5-year table, it talks about if there wasn't the 5-year incremental or implementation phase-in, at year 1, the rates for standard would be, and what the rate for Beckett Point, the rate for Calla Point, and the rates of the postage stamp, just to have a reference point. As we move through the year, there is those percentage increases as was discussed at the last sewer rate meeting. So I'll let Will add anything that I may have left out. So.
The only thing I would add is that this discussion came up in our directors meeting, resulting from the strategic planning discussions and looking at having standardized, fair, and easily communicable rates for all of our products, or for all of our utility services. Because every single one of our other utility services has a postage stamp rate, it seemed to me strategic and advantageous to be consistent and include that for sewer as well, especially as we are anticipating adding in a number of additional sewer systems. And then, just in going out and explaining the difference between one area getting 118 versus 49. And there are definitely reasons for that. And if that is the way that we are going forward, we will do that. We will make those explanations. We will meet with the communities. But just at this juncture, before we go out and have those discussions, and as I said, as a result of the strategic planning discussions, we wanted to bring it back to the commissioners one more time to consider just adopting postage rate or postage stamp rates for all utility services.
I'm going to add one thing in here too. One of the hardest parts with trying to charge per customer type really becomes in year 1, there could be a huge cost, which would make some of these other, for example, you could have a problem at Calla Point next year, which would drive their rates up considerable, which then you're always looking at the cost for the work you do at each site. So the postage stamp does blend those costs, and you don't make your forecast based on a time or a space in time where you're setting your rates moving forward. So that is part of the consideration too, is if things go wrong, you would have to adjust one rate versus the others. So discussions.
Go ahead, Jeff. I think you got in first.
So I'm curious, I don't know who can answer this, Will or Kevin, but I guess if we stick with the 3 separate categories or classes or whatever we want to call them, of differential rates, how do we show the difference in costs? Have we got a summarized costs for, say, Beckett Point compared to Calla Point compared to the blended ones? So if we're going to go out and meet with folks and explain why we have 3 different standards, are the numbers summarized in a way that we can make that case, fairly easily, or is it pretty challenging to do that?
I think Sam's done that work, Sam.
Yes. So currently we have, per the FCS cost of service study, it was broken out. We have them broken out in work orders currently. We broke out the Beckett Point and the Calla Point, and then we have a general one. And that's how we came up currently with the rates of the 3 different structures that is there. So we can provide that information in the backup of how we got to the point of where we are with the standard Beckett Point and Caleb Point rate. And then, you know, doing the blended or the postage stamp rate is also within the study. So we can show all 4 of those options. Yes. Sorry, that was a long answer for yes.
If I can comment, now, because it's based on the cost of service study, I feel fairly comfortable relying on that data to justify differential rates. You know, we have different classes of people under the electric side of our business as well. And I'm just looking at the difference over a 5-year period for Caleb Point, that would be a 400% increase. And I think that's going to upset a lot of people who live there. And since it's not based on actual cost of service, I think it's going to be hard to justify. I think we will make a lot of people there very angry if we go to postage stamp rates. And if it were the case that we could back it up with the actual cost of service delivery, that would be different. But I find it very hard to support. And I understand from an administrative point of view, the value in having a postal rate. But from an actual implementation and customer service point of view, I don't feel that this is something that I'm comfortable supporting.
So, yeah, I'm in that camp with the postage stamp rate for this particular juncture with this particular line of the business, because it is a small amount of customers. I understand the pain that's involved with this. I think until we get to, or at least close to, actually rates that represent cost of service, the postage stamp option really is an unfair way to approach this for this group. So, and the other part of this that's missing for me was they're still part of the water division. They're going to stay part of the water division if we continue with not going to a postage rate, for sure, in my opinion. That what was the subsidy that the water department was going to be putting towards the sewer customers? That is missing from this again with this new diagram that we're looking at here for rate structure. Does this postage stamp rate even take that into account? Because that has to be prorated and changed from what FCS put forward, I would think. Because when I do the math, I mean, simple math to me, when I look at this for 2022, the 4071 isn't an actual average rate. There's a differential between the actual, what the average rate would be, which is how I view the postage stamp rate. But then the further out you go, the numbers, change again. It doesn't stay consistent with trying to meet cost of service as we're kind of expecting these numbers to represent cost of service. So I guess my short question is where are we at with the subsidy that the water department is going to be putting towards this postage stamp rate?
Sam, I believe it would be just the same that it would be putting towards any rate scheme.
Yes,
Shouldn't
because it's a
matter
blend
either
of
way.
these numbers. You're correct. It was in the $500,000 range.
Yeah. And then,
Sorry.
oh, that's right. And I was just going to say the average cost for the postage stamp is averaged over the total number of customers, not averaged between the 3 rates. So it's a different calculation. And these, and Sam, I'm not sure, but I think the postage stamp rates came from calculations that FCS had, but had not presented in their final plan. So
That's
that
correct.
might be why you had not seen them, Dan. Ken?
I'm sorry, I meant to lower my hand.
I'll just jump in with a little more thought. So I appreciate what staff is trying to do. And I think, as Kevin points out, there will probably be investments that are going to need to be made in the Calla Point system as time goes on. And I think there will be, I think now it's explainable. You know, nobody's going to like it because their rates are going up, and they're going up for multiple reasons, but we've got the data to back up why they need to go up. And we've got the data to back up why each group is in the group they're with. And at some point, I think there's going to be, the differential is not going to be that much, and it's going to decrease, and Calla Point is going to be closer to Beckett Point. And at that point, and the complexity is, we add more systems, and it's going to be harder to justify keeping separate classes. So I think there will be a day for postage stamp, and who knows, it may not be in the too distant future, but we're making such, in a lot of ways, a pretty radical change to what they're paying, because we're trying to catch up to 100% of the cost, that I think this is a good interim step to get there. We're addressing one problem. We're hopefully making the system pay for itself in this 6-year time frame, and stop the subsidy. And we've got a rational basis for it, but it's complex. And over time, we probably will need to reduce the complexity to keep track of it all. I guess that's just my thoughts on it.
So I went back and listened to the discussion on August 17th. And part of that was to go out to the communities. Was any outreach ever done? We reach out to the three systems, not three, there was more than 3 systems involved with this, but did we ever go out and speak with the customers about what we were thinking about doing?
We
No,
wanted to,
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin, please.
we wanted to talk to the commissioners first on this. We have information back that was requested by Beckett Point and Calla Point. So Sam is ready to schedule and move it forward. We wanted to talk to the commissioners one last time. We have heard and have direction, and we will schedule the meetings with the appropriate groups.
Because I know there was talk, about the 3 and the 5 year, phase ends, and then a hybrid that was kind of tabled, trying to do a hybrid. It's painful, but I'm really not even still in favor of this 5-year phase in. Because of the subsidies involved here. This is, again, we need to let everybody know, because they're water customers too, a lot of them, that, the impact of the water department in this subsidy is significant. And the longer we go trying to stretch this out, the more those other customers who aren't, again, out in the county, who have their own septic systems, there's a fairness and an equity issue here. And it's going to be a tough one that I think everybody needs to understand what's going to happen if we go with the 3 or the 5 year phase in.
So does staff need any more direction on this one? Okay.
No, we appreciate your time listening to us.
Okay. I have to just make an announcement. I have to check out of my hotel room and move down to the business center for the balance of the meeting. And in transit, if you lose me, I'll get reconnected as soon as I'm able to. It's possible that in the elevator I may get lost.
All right. So yeah, if we have anything that needs final action taken, we'll hold off till you're ready, Jeff.
And we hope you don't get lost in the elevator.
I hope so too. Just lost to the virtual world, I guess. So I'm gonna mute myself and stop the video, but I'm gonna keep listening.
So is there any public or further staff input, and then any further public input on this particular item of the sewer rates? Seeing and hearing none, we will move on, because there's no action to be taken at this point, to 5.3, the Otto Street building.
So I'm going to hand this off to Don McDaniels. At a previous meeting, staff was given the task to negotiate and work towards the purchase of a building on Otto Street. Don McDaniels has an update, and then from there, we'll move forward. So Don?
Hi, everybody. So after several discussions with the board on context of a negotiating strategy, we do have a signed offer from the seller. And in a snapshot view, that signed offer includes a purchase price of $1,370,000, a $30,000 earnest money, and we have Jefferson Title handling the close. We're looking at a proposed closing date of January 31st, 2022. We were able to negotiate a contingency of 30 days to do the proper inspections on the building prior to close. We were also able to negotiate all the furniture, all the electronic equipment, which includes broadband, telephone, teleconferencing appliances, propane tank, the generator, and 100% access and ownership of the adjacent cell tower. So in the next 30 days, we'll be out there inspecting the building, make sure that we're doing the proper due diligence, make sure there's nothing pops up that we need to deal with. And I'll just suggest to you, based on this, as I have mentioned before, even at the low end of activity on broadband, I think the PUD is going to need additional space. Already we're seeing a lot of employees who need additional support reflected in additional people being added in the budget. Also, we have an older modular unit that's going to need to be replaced. We're going to need to have space for those people too. That's my report.
At this time, I'm not going to add anything, but in the new business, we're going to go over succession planning, and some positions will be identified, or at least talked about, where we need additional people. And then in the manager's report, there'll be some updates on where we are and some staffing requirements there. So there'll be some additional information as we get through the this meeting on required personnel. So that's an update. Unless we hear different from the commissioners, we are going to move forward with the inspections to make sure how everything goes. We hope to bring something back on the January 4th board meeting.
So I guess I'll start. Again, it's about the amount of space we have, the space we need, and employees. And like you said, Kevin, we'll talk about some of that later on. You know, we had rented space that over in Hadlock that was about $16,000 a year. And I don't know how many employees we could have kept there. You know, when we moved into, 310, it did seem like space was an issue. And I realized there's, outbuildings and other things that we're utilizing now that are nearing the end of life. So again, I think it is important, for the public to understand what our needs are, what our projected needs may be. But for me, at the end of the day, I see the synergies. I understand a lot about why this building makes sense. But for me, it comes down to, is a want or is the need, and how are we going to fund the purchase, and what is the total cost of purchase when everything is said and done? So those are things that are, weighing on me as to whether or not we should or shouldn't do it. Would we like to? Most definitely. Is there some reasons that we can justify it? Yes, there is. But ultimately, if this is going to be somewhat moved forward on because of broadband, that as we start the broadband line of business, broadband is going to have to carry its own weight. What is broadband's portion of this purchase, and how much funding are we going to get? And should that funding be going towards, buying this property or future properties and that sort of thing? So I'd like to have a few more numbers on, what it's going to take and how much of this is proportionate to broadband and how much is proportionate to our other business lines.
Dan, you bring up some good points, and I do think we need to move away from saying this building is just for broadband. It's not. When we move through the succession planning, and that really is where we start to point out the needs of the PUD, where we have to have backup for people, and the necessity to provide a working space for everyone to come in and do their work. So as we move forward, Dan, some of your questions will be answered hopefully today, but definitely by the 4th when we come back with more of a proposal for the building.
Thank you. Jeff?
So if I'm hearing right, what's happened is we made an offer. The offer's been accepted. The ball's back in our court to do the inspections and make sure there's no surprises with this thing. And we're not being asked to take more action than that, that we're basically you're letting us know that our offer's been accepted and the ball's back in our court to decide, do we want it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
And 4.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, I'll reiterate, you probably heard it, Jeff. My point is funding. How are we going to fund this?
Right. And I guess that's a really good question. So how many days are we going to have on this thing to do our studies? And are we going to be given a presentation on here's how we can pay for it within that period of time?
So I guess I'll jump in here. As you know, and even again later on in this meeting, we are working with RUS to do some long-term financing for this building and other projects. So we will have some financial options ready by the 4th. Again, there's certain things that we are doing now that are tentative. So I believe by the 4th, we will not only bring forward a inspection sheet that says these are the things that have to be done, but we will bring a couple financing options to the board. We're looking at RUS right now, heavily trying to get that completed just because of the interest rate. It's right now at about 2%, and that makes this building pretty economical at 2%. So that's where we are on the financial side.
So I'm going to throw this out, and then this will be my last one on this topic. I'm not a proponent of us taking on a lot more debt, without some, definite assurances, that the revenue streams are going to be, viable and things like that. So again, you made the comment that this isn't just about broadband, and I agree. Taking into account all the places we have people housed and things like that. There's $560,000 in property tax money that we delegated in the budget to the broadband, but this is a way for me to everybody to get equity out of their tax money. I believe that $560,000 in the broadband budget should be dedicated to the purchase price of this building. That's just one of the options for funding that I'm going to throw out there that we should consider as part of this moving forward to reduce the amount of money that we quote unquote have to borrow. So low interest or no, debt is debt. And so without knowing the viability of the broadband business line yet, and the supply chain issues, the cost of doing business, getting materials, the rates we're going to have to increase. We know we're going to be increasing rates again that we hadn't anticipated on for certain parts of our business lines. This is the money is going to be important at the end of the day.
So Jeff, just to follow up just a second on an amount of time, we've got 30 days on inspections. I don't think it's going to take 30 days, but we want to give ourselves plenty of time given everything that's going on in the world today to make sure we could get through it.
So I'll just add to what I said. I mean, you guys gave us a really nice presentation previously on, we don't have a no cost option to pursue in terms of providing good quality long-term space for our staff. And my recollection of when we looked at the options and we looked at bringing in modulars, that they're a different kind of investment. They're an investment that doesn't have the longevity of a site built building on a foundation like this one is. And the inspections will tell us a lot more about the condition of the building and so forth, and if it's a prudent investment or not. But my recollection was that we're going to be looking at future investments to accommodate our growing staffing capabilities. So it's I don't look at this one as necessarily significantly more expensive than the others. In a lot of ways, it's especially when you look at the cost of construction, it's a very potentially very good investment. But I hear what Dan's saying, and we probably are going to be looking at, okay, how do we adjust our rates in the future to cover the full cost of the PUD? But we are in a position where we don't have adequate and space. That's the kind of space we need to provide our staff so they can do what they need to do.
Ken, your hand's up.
Yes, it is. I agree with Commissioner Randall. I think whether we get the broadband funding or not, we will need the space, and the cost of construction predictably is only going to go up in future years. And when you have something that has long-term value, such as a building, it makes sense to finance it over time rather than try to pay for it out of revenue. So I would personally not be in favor of using the real estate revenues that we get to pay for this building. I think it makes sense given the low interest rate, and interest rates predictably are also going to go up. I think we've got an opportunity here to buy a building which appears to be in very good shape for a reasonable price and at an excellent interest rate. And I would like to see us move forward on this, providing that the inspections are consistent with that decision.
Any further discussion on this item? Any public comment? Any questions from staff? All right, we will move on to new business. And again, for this discussion purposes, please hold public comment until each presentation is done. But before there would be any vote, 6.1, the Clean Energy Transformation Act, CEIP.
Okay, this is going to go to Will and Jean. Jean did a presentation to the CAB yesterday. Will do a presentation, and Jean will jump in and give you some more information to the commissioners. Will?
Hey, everybody. So we've got the Clean Energy Transformation Act. Our first clean energy implementation plan is due on January 1st. So we've kind of taken the, gone ahead and put together the first draft of it. With the CETA, they're moving towards requiring all utilities by 2030 to have what's the actual requirement? Let me go down and see if I can remember it. Greenhouse gas neutral by 2030 and 100% non-emitting by 2045. We're well past our 2030 requirements and very, very much on the way to 2045. So we meet most of the standards, but they have a unique process where we also evaluate kind of how our efforts to meet the requirements of the clean energy standards impact vulnerable populations in our community. And so they ask for us to engage in some public process to go over and talk about establishing what the vulnerable populations are and what those risks might be for those populations, and then to come up with some indicators of how we measure those risks. So to handle that process, we are unique in so many ways, our PUD, and you guys hear that over and over from us. We're the only PUD with a citizen advisory board, and we have this great public mechanism for feedback on what we're doing and engaging our citizens. So we had the meeting yesterday. Jean walked through our CEIP plan with them yesterday and went over a survey. So what we'd like to do today is Jean's going to walk you through that same survey and get some feedback. And ideally, we would like to bring this back to the meeting on the 21st for finalization. We have to file it with the state on January 1st. But this is a living document. So after we file, we are allowed to update it and go through and make updates to our plan, but we do need to have it completed and filed by the 1st. Other requirements are is once we approve the plan, we need to post it on our website. We'll do that. And I should also say that Jean and I wanted to engage directly with our social service agencies. We've sent that survey out to them. Because we have the meeting on the 21st, we're going to bring their feedback to that meeting for the final plan draft that we'd like you to approve on that date. If you wanted to move forward the plan today, we have a couple of things to finish with gaining some metrics, but we're very close. So if anyone has any questions in the process, I can answer it that now, or we'll move on to Jean leading you guys through the survey. Looks like no questions. Jean? You're muted, Jean. I can hear you through the wall.
Of course. Do you want to pull that up, Will?
Yes. Yep. Can everybody see it?
Yes, that's great.
Okay.
So this actually includes some of the notes that were taken at the CAB meeting yesterday. So part of identifying those vulnerable communities, we need to think of our low-income households, low-income seniors, those who have received rainy day funds, repeat shut-off customers. We are actually working on creating a heat map to get a better view of where those are with those numbers. So under the other variable or vulnerable populations, the CAB members came up with homeless encampments. Peninsula Housing Authority reach out to them because they deal with those low income housing issues, the tent cities, farm workers, school districts for kids who are on free and reduced lunch, and those with permanent disability, which we no longer track as our low income program has changed to not have a specific disability discount. So what we need to get from our public are, where are you seeing these vulnerable populations when you're out and about and in the community? Who do you think we need to look at that will be mostly affected? And this is the part where we just went through the round table and we kind of brainstormed and just started throwing ideas out there. We want to write them all down, and then we're going to go back and do some clarification. So at this point, I'd like to pause and ask the board for their ideas. Commissioner Tupper?
Yeah, it's Commissioner Tupper. So yeah, this is kind of a tough one, you know, to kind of get your head wrapped around these vulnerable communities as a community, because there's, you know, so many different instances. I guess one of my takes on it for communicating and messaging would maybe be, one of the commonalities is people who have to use the resource of the county food banks. Maybe there's a way to coordinate through or with the food banks on how to recognize who these groups or these individuals, really, it's more about individuals, I think, than it is groups maybe. I don't know if that is relevant to what you're trying to get to here or not. That would be the first thought that comes to mind for me.
It's absolutely relevant. It may not pertain, the individuality of it may not pertain to the CEIP, but it is still relevant. Commissioner Collins?
Yeah, thank you, Jean. I recall when I was canvassing a few years back, talking to some single mothers with children and how they were economically pressed by the cost of energy. And while we can't get information on individuals from social service agencies, I think we can probably get some blanket data to give us an idea of the size of that population who are currently receiving some sort of public assistance. So I think that that's worth exploring.
Will, you can add to that for the WIC program through the health department that, yeah. Commissioner Randall?
I don't really have any groups to add. I think you guys have done a great job in picking out some of the obvious ones. The free and reduced lunch at the schools was something I had thought about also. In looking at the information you've provided, one of the things that jumped out at me was that we had over 8,000 customer accounts that were below the 185% of poverty definition, I think was what that statistic said. And then there was also some references in the state law to such areas or examples of vulnerable populations as places that have unusually high housing costs. And, you know, there we are. So I guess I think this is good. We're identifying some of the logical folks that we should be concerned about. And then, of course, the thing I thought about too is, and we have this low income assistance programs that we're offering, which I think a lot of PUDs don't offer yet. What other kinds of conclusions or results do you see that could come out of this? Because I guess I'm looking at this thinking, okay, could this come into future rate setting? What could some of the results of this information be in terms of, because I'm assuming what they're looking at is, are our rates or is our compliance with CETA something that is impacting some communities in a way that we need to address? So I guess I'm kind of wondering what some possible results could be, not to pin you down, but to just kind of get the discussion going so we can understand the policy and what some of the ramifications of the policy might be.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. It can affect our low income program and how we manage it and administer it. We have started tracking energy burden, which we've discussed in these meetings before. Tracking it more closely can help us determine what groups need more assistance. And it could also, and I am just spitballing here, so I mean, we could bring weatherization in as a way to help compensate to reduce the energy burdens. There are so many implications. Even if we didn't have to do this for CETA, it is a good idea to have this information.
And I'll just add to that, that Jean and Kevin and I had met with FCS a few months ago to look at doing some of a cost benefit analysis on doing a graduated rate for low income benefits from 150% of poverty to 200%. So they're going to have a report on that to us in the next number of months. You know, because we have such high costs of living here, it's hard for people to get by. And so there's a possibility that we could offer some kind of graduated benefits to help folks over the 150% of poverty level. That's something we're looking at long term as well. And Jeff, just to clarify on that 8,500 number, that number is, I think it was a number I pulled. It's a census number. It's for the entire county. It's not our customer data, but it's folks facing food insecurity. So it's 185% of the poverty rate.
Okay, so it's more like 8,000. I think it was 8,088 or 8,000 and something individuals that then fall below that. Okay, that's good to know. I mean, it's still significant in a county of roughly 30,000 people, that 8,000 of them are.
Yeah, if it was 8,000 households, that would be a huge percentage of our customer
Yeah,
base.
Yeah, it's
Individuals.
still a big number. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you for that clarification.
That's all I had, Gene.
Okay. And something I didn't mention and I should have, like Will said, we are reaching out to OLICAP and other social services, but we've also reached out to Jefferson Healthcare. They have been doing a study over the past year on vulnerable populations. So we've reached out to contacts there and we'll be meeting with them. They will also be going through this survey. Commissioner Collins.
I appreciate all the work that has gone into this. The request from the Department of Commerce, I think, has been somewhat confusing. And there's an internal contradiction here if we want to if the ultimate goal is to have a cleaner environment, then in some ways we don't really want to reduce the consumption of energy from electricity. What we want to do is try to incentivize more people to switch from dirtier sources of energy to electricity, which for our situation currently exceeds standards that are decades off. So I'm very pleased that the PUD is pursuing funding from RUS that would allow us to loan people money to switch energy sources, which we had not had a mechanism previously to enable. So I think we're moving in the right direction. And I will lower my hand.
So with that, I'll move on to the second portion. Thank you, Commissioner Collins. You brought that up, and that's bringing up the indicators. So the main actions that we identified as staff to mitigate or to how do I put it? I'm getting my terms confusing because, as you said, the requirements of this plan are quite confusing. To track the costs and benefits on vulnerable populations. The way that we're going to be able to help comply with the clean energy requirements, the actions we're going to take is we're just going to continue to purchase and provide 90+% carbon-free Tier 1 BPA power to our customers. We just got the fuel mix report back for 2020, and we're up to 96% carbon-free again. We dropped down to an unfortunate low of 95 last year from 98 in the past. So we're going to be able to continue to provide our customers nearly carbon-free electricity and more than meeting the 80% mix of renewable and non-emitting sources. And then we're going to increase our energy efficiency program offerings and kilowatt hour savings. Introducing this, the RESP program, whether we do it this year or next year, is just going to be a huge game changer in offering our citizens and customers the opportunities to provide energy efficiency improvements in their homes. It's going to go a long way to making quality of life better for a lot of folks, as Commissioner Collins said, with environment and public health. So those are our two main actions. And what we're trying to identify for indicators is how we measure those actions, measure both the cost to vulnerable populations and the benefits that might be provided. This section was especially confusing to all of us. Jean, you walked through the CAB yesterday. They came up with great answers. Do you want to continue for the board?
Sure. We're just looking for indicators, metrics in these Yeah, it's so hard to explain. In these categories, we need to find and get ideas for the metrics we can use to determine how effective. So again, with this in the CAB meeting yesterday, we just brainstormed. Everybody had ideas. We just wrote them all down. And we're going to go from there. Commissioner Tupper.
Thanks, Gene. So mine is not an added suggestion here, but it's just a point, and this comes up a lot during the discussions, with BPA and about the contracts for 2028 under energy efficiency. There's an end game for some of this stuff that we have to keep in mind. You reach a saturation point on how many light bulbs and energy efficient appliances and things you can do. We need to keep sight of that as we track whatever metrics we're looking at, but that one in particular, you got to be careful of how you may hang too much emphasis on that one in particular to get to the goals. So that's just kind of a looking forward to me, is that you kind of have to maintain a little bit of perspective over, how many of these things are we going to get to too early? You know what I'm saying? That's just something we should probably keep in mind.
Yeah, Dan, I'll add to that point, which is a good one. The BPA phased out residential lighting benefits. And there's talk that other benefits that we get, other rebate programs, will be phased out over time. That's part of where the RESP program is going to be a huge benefit, because as some of those BPA rebates fade out, we'll be able to provide those and allow our customers to get energy efficiency loans to have affordable improvements. And then right now, after last summer's heat wave, the demand for heat pumps is through the roof. We're getting so many applications. We still got a long way to go before we exhaust those, but you're correct. They're being adopted quickly, and at some point they won't be able to be adopted anymore. And other programs will come up, and there's always the commercial side of it too, because commercial lighting is still a big thing, even though residential isn't, and commercial HVAC systems provide a huge kilowatt hour savings over the cost of our entire system. Those will go on, but that's all I have to add. If you guys want to add indicators here.
It's
Looks like
hard.
it must be a fairly exhaustive list at this
I
point.
mean, I'll just say, I think that's the full, I've looked at a couple other clients' lists, and they aren't any more robust than yours. These are, and I think just overall, there's a not, this is going to be just the baseline start for the state in January 1st, 2022. And, we'll be able to fill it out and improve it as the years go by. Great effort though, so far, I have to say.
What's the deadline on submitting this? I'm kind of wondering if it makes sense to have this as a first touch, and it sounds like you're still reaching out to some of the other organizations in the county, and you might add a little more detail before we actually take action on this. When do we need to turn this in?
It has to be submitted by the 1st, and it has to be approved by the board before we could submit. So if you guys there was concern that this was our last meeting of the year, but it sounds like there's possibly going to be another one on the 21st. So if that happens, we can finalize it on the 21st.
And we would like to get this up on the website as well and promote this to the general public. Ask for everybody's opinion. I think that would be a beneficial to us.
Yeah, in line with what Jeff was saying, I'd read the deadlines and that I would have hoped that we maybe would have had this meeting a little sooner to give the public more time to weigh in on this, but we are where we are. That sounds like a good idea to put it on the website. I don't know where the newsletter is at, whether it's gonna be too late for fitting with the newsletter or whatever. Maybe reaching out to the newspapers as well, that this is something we're doing, is a little bit of messaging here to get community, a little more community input would probably be the best line of attack.
Yeah, we
Yes,
can
and
do
that community input does not have to stop on January 1st. We can continue taking input going forward.
The obligation by January 1st is that this commission needs to actually accept and approve the plan. And then that gets submitted to the state.
So with that, are we for sure going to have another meeting where this can be reviewed or not? Or should we take action now?
So I can ask real quick. I believe we were going to have an executive session on the 21st. The first part of the meeting could be a special meeting just for this topic, and then exit into executive session if that's agreeable to the board.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. The closer we get to first touch, second touch, the better.
I'm okay with that.
Do we have a time for that meeting at this point?
Jeff, we have a tentative schedule from 10 to 12.
Thank you.
And staff can have the full report finished and to the board a few days before, so we just have a review.
So is there any public comment on item 6.1? Since we've got consensus to put this on, on that meeting, I guess we're to the point to where, does anyone else want to weigh in on this? I'm not seeing any hands. So with that, unless staff has anything else to add? Seeing and hearing none, we will move on to item 6.2, annual meeting requirements.
So the PUD, as stated earlier, is working on an RUS loan application. This does not mean we're going to borrow money. It just puts us in the position, if we do borrow money, we have the RUS funds available. It is quite a detailed requirement that we have to put together, a lot of information. One of those, we have to declare our annual meeting. In the cooperative world, the annual meeting is usually when you try to get as many of your customers or your customer owners as you can to a meeting. You do a lot of things to encourage people to come in. In our case, and I have talked to Joel trying to pick his brain, we would like to state that our annual meeting would be the first meeting in October. That's when we do our budget meeting, and it's when we go over the county requirements for the property tax. And so we would like to moving forward, just dedicate the first meeting in October as our annual meeting. And doesn't need a motion. We will put this on our RUS form. Technically, we were supposed to have an annual meeting date from day one. We didn't, but moving forward, we will. So any questions or issues with the date and how to move that forward?
Jeff?
So I'm guessing that is in the RUS form because that's part of the co-op world regulatory environment, that they're required by their federal authorizing legislation that they have an annual meeting, and that has a purpose and it describes what they're supposed to do. Have you ever talked to RUS and said, hey, we're from a different world. Our authority doesn't require us to have annual meetings. Can we put NA on this one? I mean, have you asked that question?
2 weeks ago, we met with RUS for several hours. Mike Bailey has a meeting with them next week. That'll take 3 or 4 hours. Their statement was, it doesn't matter that you don't carry on the business of a co-op. You have to have the annual meeting date.
Okay, and is
so
there
they
anything
do require it?
Is there anything in their definitions then about what business we have to conduct during an annual meeting?
No,
Well,
it's
I mean,
just we.
if nothing
Can
else,
I-
one of the things we could do is we could just say we're an RUS borrower. In our annual meeting, we could say we have the special relationship with RUS that a lot of PUDs don't have, and kind of go over those things. So, okay, well, I'm fine with it. Just want to ask those questions.
Commissioner Tuber, if you don't mind, I'll follow up. Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Yeah, it's just a real misnomer for a public utility district. And like many things in the federal government, it's just easier to comply. And it seems to make sense to us that the annual meeting would be the time of the, potential adoption of your annual budget, and would all line up that way. But it's just easier to say that's our annual meeting, and it sort of equates to it. But we're not a private entity, so we're not required to have one.
Yeah, the date makes sense to me. We do a lot of things come to culmination around that time, from rates to budgets to, other issues. So that works for me.
Okay, we're gonna move forward with that then. Thank you.
All right, so any public comment on item 6.2, the annual meeting requirement? Seeing none, we will move on to 6.3, succession planning.
So Will's gonna bring up PowerPoint. We're gonna run through this very quick. This meeting's running a little bit longer than we expected. So part of this will be brought back on the meetings in January, but succession planning has been something that's been asked, and we're gonna move forward. This is just the approach on how staff looks at succession planning, and is to get buy-in from the commission on the approach we're gonna take. Primarily, this is steps forward. How do we start the planning process? And Melanie has helped me, and she will jump in at times on this program. Next slide. So what we're going to try to do in early 2022 is identify key positions, assess available talent, create a readiness chart, document strengths and weaknesses, and based on that, we will build, hire, borrow, and possibly release personnel as needed. Succession planning, there'll be a communication department component, I should say. There'll be a workforce planning and a timeline we'll go over quickly. Next slide. So to understand, talent is an enterprise risk. Talent can be a director, it can be anyone all the way down through to a groundman position. It's through the entire company. The risk part comes in though, as we train and elevate people, you can lose them. For part of my discussion, I'm going to talk about Mike Bailey. He's aware that I'm going to talk about him. This has gone between Mike and I a little bit. So as far as losing people, as we train them, Mike's completed some high-level NRECA classes. Within days of completing the task, he was a recruiter reached out to him and talked about a position. Those things are going to happen. Now, Mike's not going to go for that position, but as our people become more valuable to the PUD, they're valuable to everyone, and there is a huge vacuum for skilled personnel. We have to get the engagement of all the leaders at the PUD and the commission. We have to ensure managers drive the process instead of HR. HR is a partner, but the driver is the directors and the managers of the departments. We have to have a willingness to develop the talent pool. One of the companies that I contacted prior to this presentation, they did an internal mentoring program where the manager would mentor those below them to take the manager's position. In the 4 cases, one of them went really well. The mentor and the mentee got along great. In the next instance, the mentors and mentees just kind of went through the process. They didn't actually, the mentees didn't gain anything. And in the 3rd case, it actually became quite evident that the mentor and the mentee didn't get along, and that one was a complete success, a complete failure. So there has to be a willingness in the management, the directors, to actually promote people to take their job. And that's a hard thing to do. You have to keep the process alive through established meetings and a process that's available to everyone. And that's a weak point at the PUD, is the follow through. We don't, on some of the programs we do put together, we don't quite finish them off. And in this, that will be a death blow if you don't continue to push this forward. Next slide. These are the steps. Each step has to be communicated. It not only has to be communicated throughout the PUD, but with the commissioners. It's important that we're all on the same page. A lot of documentation has to be put together. And this is hard because the documentation lists strengths, weaknesses, and it gets down to the core of training that we all need at the PUD. Next slide. One of the first things we're proposing is you identify key people. Key people usually are your next tier down from the manager, but there's also key people that could be 2 tiers down that are rising stars. So what we're trying to show here is through interviews and different processes, you identify your key people, you put them in some charts, and you pretty much say, okay, these are the people and the paths forward, keeping in mind it does not have to be a director or a manager. It could be anyone throughout the PUD. Next slide. You have to assess the talent, and part of assessment becomes when the position is going to be open, and can you train somebody in the time that's available to train. For example, if the operations director is going to leave in a year, can the person that has been tagged, or people that's been tagged to take that position, can they be trained and brought up to speed in that time frame? So that's the matrix we're trying to show here is, you know, the need, you know, the time, can you train and get your people qualified in that amount of time? Next slide, Will. And please stop me. I know I'm going through this quick, but this is just a start, and this will come back to you. A lot of documents have to be done, and this is done in conjunction with the board, the manager, the directors, HR, and you list their strengths, you list their weaknesses, you list training that is required, and then maybe some timelines to get to the next level. Now, I'm going to say we're talking about here moving somebody up to the director. The same principle applies for somebody moving up to my position. We give them the opportunity, the training. It's not a guarantee that they're going to get the position, but it is what happens during your succession planning is you guarantee the training and the opportunity to get to the interview process. The board at all times, at least in my position, they have the final say. They would probably bring in outside people to interview, but this would allow internal candidates to the PUD to be successful in those interviews. And that's what we're talking about here, not only at my level, but as if you do hire internal, there is a cascading effect. So you move one person up, so someone has to move into that position. The position that was vacated from the second hire goes to the third hire. And that's why the readiness chart becomes quite valuable. That's happened here at the PUD. Again, with Mike's department, we took one of his accounting people, moved him into the manager's position. The other accounting person moved to that position, and the CSR filled the vacation. And so the readiness documentation is extremely important. Next slide. We do have to document everyone's strengths. Who can success into what position and how. And that's not only based on qualifications, can they do the job, experience. Some people may choose not to try to go to the next level. And that's documented in these programs where Mike, for example, is taking some additional classes and trainings to move up to the next level. Others may choose not to, and that's fine. It just once we identify those who do want to move up, again, all the way through the company, not just to my job, but to the director level, it takes a charts and stuff like this to say, okay, yes, you are, and you can move up to the next level. Next slide. Oh. On this one, when we talk about building, we develop internal talent. And that's by training, giving opportunity to go to different programs, different opportunities. It's allow different people to interface with their peers and that sort of thing. And that's really my job. My job is to give opportunity to those who want to move up. We've always talked about a large training budget, and that's where this comes in. It costs a lot to train our people. And at this point, when you start training them to be on the, for example, to take my job, the costs go up, and there'll be numbers given to the board moving forward. When we recruit new employees, we have to pay attention to their possibilities. You're recruiting for a director, but does that director have the capabilities to move up and do other things? So when we're hiring new people, we have to keep that in mind. And we also have to hire people that can possibly do more than one thing, some crossover. When we talk about borrowing, we're really talking about contractors coming in and helping us. For example, Joel, he's a contractor, he's our legal department, but he's also helps out in HR and stuff like that. So that's how we're considering that. And then release. If there's underperforming or excess labor, that has to be discussed also, and you give them some additional training, you move them to possibly a different part of the company or process that maybe they're more fit to. But as you're developing your talent, and these things do become noticeable, is the underperforming and how do we try to get them up. Melanie, I haven't given you much chance to talk because I'm rushing through this real quick. You want to jump in real quick?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add that you had touched on a little bit, but I wanted to just elaborate on it a little bit more. When we met about this, we talked about also meeting with employees to really figure out what their career goals are. So not only are they interested in advancing and moving up, but in what departments, because it could be that, let's say there's an engineer that really would love to path up to be in finance. So I think it's important that we do sort of an intake interviews with employees and really see what their goals are in advancing. So that was the only thing that I wanted to add, Kevin, that you had mentioned.
Okay, next slide. So I found this slide really intriguing. So when you're thinking about the future, there's a possible future, plausible future, probable future, and preferred future. That really resonated with me. I focus on the possible future because it's new and I like things changing and that kind of stuff. But as we put the workforce plan together, we need to take all of this into consideration, build probably to the probable future. Can you hit the next one, Will? So we need to align the workforce to the strategic plan and to our annual budget. Develop a comprehensive picture of where gaps exist. And part of that is in the interviews, and some gaps are going to be talked about in the manager's report if I have time, but some gaps are also going to come out with the Energy Northwest report on some of our cyber security and security issues. We need to identify and implement gap reduction strategies. A lot of that's going to focus around hiring and the challenges we see in hiring and bringing people into the PUD. And then there has to be some discussion on how to best structure the organization to deploy the workforce we do have. We can want all of these people, but we're only going to have the people we have, lack of a better term. And so we have to deploy our workforce based on who's here at that time. Next slide. Communications is a huge part of this. Once everything's worked out, we will start talking to all employees. I have started to talk to some of my employees on their annual employee reviews. These are sensitive issues. It takes time. There's a fluidity It's highly confidential. How does all this get shared between internal staff, the board, and the public? And then share the formal process and create key criteria for choosing successors. That allows all staff to say, okay, if I do these things, I will be better fit to move up in the organization. Next slide. So this is the timeline we're proposing to the board. Short term, the first year we would identify, assess, document, and get commissioner approval. There's a lot of dollars that are going to be spent in succession planning, and it's crucial that the commissioners all buy into the process and the end product. And it has to survive if I'm gone or if other people are gone. The plan, once you start training and giving people the opportunity, has to continue even if other people leave. In the 2-year range, you build, you hire, you borrow. To build, we would train and empower existing staff. We would cross-train departments. Again, the training, the cross-training, all of that does take commissioners' approval and buy-in, and staff buy-in. The 3-year plus term, key staff is given the opportunity to grow into their next roles, and the commissioners are part of that growth process and how everything moves forward. So that was a real quick run through and a very complicated process. We will bring additional information to the board. Melanie, do you want to jump in one last time?
No, I think that you've covered it all. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we discussed prior to this. I know it was a sort of a high level overview of a complex process, but I think you did touch on all the points.
So for the commissioners, is this something that you're, with some more detail, a little bit more time and explanation, you could work with, or do you want us to look down a different path?
Go ahead, Jeff. I think you're muted.
Thank you. I got to move again. I'm trying to transition to my phone. We got to go into a cab here shortly and I'll go on my phone. But so what I'm hearing is it sounds like, Kevin, you've been to some training. You've gotten some good stories. I really like what I'm seeing here. And it seems like it's more of a methodology, and succession planning isn't something you do by itself. It's something, it sounds like you incorporated into how you evaluate your employees and provide them feedback on how they're doing. It sounds like it also goes into your framework of your organization when you're looking at your organizational chart. It sounds like it goes into even budgeting when you're thinking about what you might have to do for the next year. And I really like it. I didn't anticipate that it was going to be integrated in that way into things we're already doing. And it sounds like it really will strengthen those assessments that you do. So that's my feedback. I like what you've done, and it seems like it fits nicely with the organization you're building and the efforts you're taking to develop your staff and plan ahead. So I'll just stop there.
Commissioner Collins.
Yeah, I want to thank you for providing us with this presentation. I think it's critical that we be thinking about succession. We're a small organization that makes it more difficult to identify individuals who are able to move up. You simply don't have that many choices. So I think this is the right time to proceed, and I'm glad that you brought this forward to our attention, and I look forward to the next steps.
So yeah, I think you've laid out a pretty good path forward, Kevin. We definitely have to support and encourage upward mobility. You know, there's challenges to that, you know, union members, you know, who may not want to leave the union that are, you know, important. And that leads me to the kind of the experience factor. When you stay internal, we are such a young utility on the electric side. And now we're talking about broadband again, and what kind of staff we may bring in or who we're going to develop here. It still kind of brings me around to that this is all good, but you know, what's the backup plan? And I think part of the backup plan from my way of looking at this is to insert a little more. And this isn't a referendum on any of the people that are here now or the work that they're doing. They're all doing excellent work and meeting and exceeding expectations, is that to mentor people, and you know, broadband may be the place to look at this, and because we're starting down that road, is to get a little more experience here, you know, to help mentor so that the internal positions really are getting the best bet. Taking trainings is great. You know, I've done that over the course of my career, taking trainings, and it's helped me. But it isn't necessarily the same as having someone there to help you in real time, you know, that's been there, done that. And I think that's a component we are still lacking. And I don't know that there's an answer to it. It's not like we can go out and hire, you know, 10 super experienced people, because one, it costs a lot of money to do that. So it's not what I'm suggesting, but I do think we do need to keep that component in mind. It's as we look at expanding or look at hiring, that, you know, there's some really bright and new people out there, but let's not overlook the fact that maybe there's a little bit to be said for finding someone who's, for the lack of better terms, more towards the end of their career, that's not looking to advance, to come in here and help you mentor, you know, these workers, or, you know, and that particular dynamic. So that's kind of my 2 cents. Don?
So Kevin, I think this does three important things. It provides some formalization of a plan that not only the organization and the board can see, but also the general public. I think it provides a clarity and a roadmap, not only for management, but for employees as well, as you work through the process, and it signals to the employees that there's possible opportunities here. So not only does it help your depth chart, but hopefully it will increase morale as well. So I like this a lot, Kevin.
Any other comments on succession planning at this point from staff or commissioners? Seeing and hearing none, we're not taking any action. So, but the public, this would be your chance to weigh in on this topic. If you have anything to add, Jessica, 3 minutes.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Kevin and staff for putting this together. You know, I've been a big proponent of succession planning for quite a long time now. So thank you. And I think this was an excellent presentation, and I like the way you're moving forward to it. That's it.
Thanks, Jessica. Anyone else? Your hand's still up, Jessica, and I'm not seeing any other hands at this point. I don't know if we still have anybody on the phone. So I guess we will move on to item number 7, the manager and staff reports.
I'm gonna go through this really quick. On January 4th, there'll be a discussion with the board to set the CAB meeting and some agenda items. That was brought up in the earlier discussion, so that is on the agenda for the 4th. The next item I have, and this is we'll come back to the board. Right now, for new construction, the PUD charges $3,102 to set a transformer, extend power to somebody's house. And that's total cost. That's the transformer, wire, everything. And these are numbers that correlate to that. In 2022, we paid $1,674 for a 25 kVA transformer. In 2021, we're paying $3,119 for just the transformer. And per our latest quote, that same transformer is going to cost us $8,690 moving forward. So we're going to lose $4,000 on every transformer we install. Early in 2022, we are going to bring new construction costs to the commission because we cannot ever recoup our costs with those kind of losses moving forward. And that's a 25 kVA transformer. You start getting into the bigger commercial transformers, it's not sustainable. So construction costs are going to have to go up tremendously in the first of the year. Also, we just can't keep them in stock. We can't get them. They're harder to come by. The lead times are longer. Quick update. We're starting to do an idle service program. Idle services are services on a transformer that haven't been used in the last 2 years. We're going to try to resalvage that transformer. So we're disconnecting the service. We keep track of these on our Form 7. So we know there's a lot of them out there. They system losses. There's reasons that every utility has a idle service component and policy, and that will be coming back to the board for approval. So when we remove a transformer, meter, wire, that 5 years from now, when a customer comes back, they have to pay for the new install. So there's a lot to that has to be done. There's a meeting tomorrow with the city about the Sims tree removal. I am assuming Jeff will attend that meeting for the PUD. He went to the last one. We did not get a lot of people in our breakout rooms, but it is on the tree removal around the port and putting those power lines underground. One last thing, and this will come back to the meeting on the 4th in January. 2022, the PUD is going to run into some huge challenges. They are going to be hiring problems. They're going to be material problems. We're going to be negotiating a union contract. So we're going to be getting grant money for fiber. We're going to be moving forward with a succession planning that shows that we need people to back up our existing employees. And everyone needs to really understand that 2022 is going to be a challenging year. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, a lot of hard work, a lot of work that is going to be hard on a lot of different people. We already are overworking our staff. They're doing a great job, but we just need to recognize that in 2022, it'll be a challenging year. So with that cheery news, I'm going to go and say I'm done with the manager's report.
So Kevin, this is Commissioner Tupper. So obviously this, supply chain and, inflation issues and things like that are not unique to us. Has there been any talk, amongst your group of managers or other utilities about how they're going to affect or adjust their construction rates? Is there any consensus out there about necessarily like a percentage of increase, or some going to ignore it? Or I mean, what are other people talking about out there?
So on materials, we don't talk a lot on the costs. Most of the conversation is lead times. If a transformer moves to a year out, can we even service new customers? Probably not. How do you communicate that to a customer that you can't purchase a transformer and connect his new house that they've waited a lifetime to build. So most of the supply chain issues are literally on how do you communicate when you don't have the material to build to a customer? And that's something we're going to have to talk about.
And then one other quick question, obviously we had a public comment earlier on about the Count Me In for Quill Scene. What's the process there? I mean, I know we've talked with other groups in the past about Christmas tree lighting and who pays for what, and, putting banners on poles that we didn't go down that road and allow. So where are we at with this particular one as far as staying consistent with things we have done or what we will necessarily have to do moving forward if we accommodate this?
So, and I don't know if it'll be ready on the 4th. Staff will bring a possible policy forward to the commission. We will work closely with Joel on what we can and can't do. The one thing, it will not be a policy for this group. It would be a policy for, and some PUDs give a break to other governmental entities for some lighting charges. We have a rate now that if they change it out to the LUD, we give them some a break on their costs. So we will bring something back to the commission on the 4th. It may not be what everyone wants, but it would be what we can do and what others are doing, just as part of the discussion, because we may not be able to help much, but if we can, we would like to be able to not only help this group, but other groups in the same predicament.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, because they use the term safety, but then the term that comes to mind to me is gifting of public funds. Where do we draw those type of lines? So that's the first thought that came to me as this discussion came up. Anyone else with questions for Kevin?
Yeah, this is Jeff. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. So Kevin, a number of questions. I guess I'll start with the last one, the quill scene thing. When that does come up, I think it would be worthwhile to reach out to the county, because as I thought about this, I grew up in a little town, and that little town had streetlights and sewer and stuff, but we had a town, we had a city. Quill scene is unincorporated, and yet it's kind of got elements of urbanness to it. So I wonder if when we have that discussion about quill scene, if we could reach out to the county and say, hey, we've been approached by the citizen group. There's issues about gifting of funds for, these are county residents. Does it make sense to reach out to the county as part of that discussion?
We will.
Okay. Secondly, so I heard you, I was getting into a cab, and I heard you say the issue with transformers that currently we're losing $8,000 on some transformers that we're going to install, and then you moved on to we may actually not have capacity on some transformers for residential construction, and the transformers that we're going to lose $8,000 on, is that something that we have some inventory on, or is that that our rates are that low, and the next one we order we're going to lose $8,000 on? Could you clarify that?
So we have very few transformers left in stock. We're not going to expect any until March. And I misspoke, Jeff, if I said it's the transformer itself will cost $8,000 and change. The PUD will lose $4,000 on what we charge for a customer to install, and that the cost that we charge to install is wire, everything. We will lose $4,000 just setting the transformer on the pad.
Okay, so we've got to update our fees so that we're recovering those costs. And then I heard you also saying that the kinds of transformers that we go through on a regular basis for residential, you can't get them right now, and that we're probably going to run out. So we have to, I think, communicate to folks that there might be, I don't know if you want to call it a wait list or what. It seems like we may need to get that out there, just so that folks can know as part of their construction process there may be a little delay on getting new service if it requires a new transformer that we don't have.
Yes. And we are putting
Okay.
some plans together to try to get transformers that aren't being used out in the system back in the yard. But
Okay.
it's
One of the many challenges for 2022. Thanks. That's all I have.
So is there anything else for Kevin? If not, we'll move on to commissioner reports. Jeff, you want to go ahead and go before your cab comes to a stop?
Since I'm running in a cab, all I'm going to say is I will be at that town hall. I'll participate in that town hall meeting regarding the Simsway thing, and also for Annette, if she's listening, I'm planning to come to that Theringer deal on Friday. So if more than 2 of us show up, I think she was saying she needed to notice that as a public meeting. So I won't cover everything else because I can't really do it with logistics right now.
Thanks, Jeff. Commissioner Collins, you want to go ahead?
Yes.
just could we go real quick? Theringer meeting may be done as a Zoom meeting. We don't know that for sure, but it may churn from an in-person meeting to a Zoom meeting. We will let you know shortly.
In which case we would still probably have to do messages.
We would still notice it, but it would be a Zoom versus an in-person meeting.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Collins.
Yes. And I'll try to be quick. So the 17th through the 19th, I participated in the Waputa conference. Also on the 18th, the ICG meeting. On the 30th, the special Board of Commissioners meetings at 10 and at 4. And I also spent some time on the phone talking with a local contractor about our vaccination policy. On the 1st, I had calls with Kevin as well as with Joel. The 2nd and the 3rd, I participated in the Waputa annual conference and had a call with Kevin again. I participated on the 8th in the NOAANET annual meeting. On the 10th, the JBAT meeting and another call with Kevin. Yesterday, I participated in the Citizen Advisory Board meeting. Nice that we were able to finally meet again. I look forward to the meeting, whether virtual or in person, with Representative Theringer and the executive meeting that we'll hold on the 21st. I'm not sure that JBAT will meet on the 24th, Christmas Eve. I do have appointments set again with Kevin on the 28th. There may or may not be a JBAT meeting the last day of the year. And in the new year, I will have a meeting with Kevin on the 3rd, and that's my report.
Thanks, Commissioner Collins. So yeah, I'll kind of condense mine a little here too. I attended Waputa Commissioner Education on November 17th. I attended the Waputa Committee meetings on the 18th. I took part in the Board of Directors meeting on the 19th. Listened to PPC workshop on the development of it's a paper for BPA's 2028 contract structure. That one particularly had to do with energy efficiency issues. I attended the special meeting executive session on the 23rd of November. And I attended the Waputa annual conference on the 2nd and 3rd. I met with Kevin Street on the 6th of December. I listened in on a PPC workshop, again on the post-2028 contract period that was on December 7th. Let's see, on the 8th, PPC had another workshop, that one again on the concept paper they're developing for public input on priorities for rates and contract components for the 2028 contracts. And that paper is supposed to be out in March, it sounds like. Nicholas Garcia is doing a good job of representing the utilities at those meetings. He saves a lot of questions, I think, from commissioners. Whenever he asks questions and speaks, he covers a lot of ground for us. Colin PUD was also pretty active at that particular meeting as well. On the 9th, I attended the quarterly water meeting. And the one thing that came out of the water meeting, we talk about, at all WAPUTA functions, we talk about potential funding options and things like that. But the last go around with the legislature, we didn't get any money to help us offset the cost of culvert replacement work that we do. And we have some more of that coming up in 2022 and 2023. And one of the options now, the governor's budget, it's being pretty hard to get anything out of him or the legislature for funding. So the new point of attack for WAPUTA is going to be that we offer up, maybe that we match, that we try and say, okay, we'll spend X amount, you give us X amount as a compromise or an option. And most of the members felt that that was, if that's our only option, that's great. They're still going to push for trying to get the funding outright, but it's still not looking promising. So I said that we would be in favor of that option if that was our only option, but I would prefer that we keep on trying to get either through the legislature appropriations or transportation or wherever it comes, that we, it's $12 to $15 million. It's not like we're trying to break the state here. And so anyhow, I just wanted you to be aware that I said that we would, that's our only option. We'll be on board with it. I'm going to do that. And then I guess I will attend PPC workshop on December 15th. I will attend the PD employee appreciation meeting on the 16th. I meet with Kevin on the 21st, and obviously now we also have the executive session on the 21st. So I'll be doing Kevin and I'll be doing double duty that day, it sounds like, unless something changes. And I will try to be on the Zoom call or the in-person meeting with Representative Theringer as well. I think that's the next day. What is it, the 17th or is that the 17th? I'm losing track of dates now. So that's my report. Any questions at all? If not, I guess we'll see everybody here pretty soon, not too long until the next meeting then. So with that, not hearing or seeing anything else for the good of the order, I will put us into adjournment at 12:11 p.m.
Thanks,
Have a great
everyone.
day, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.